So you alluded to the Colorado Crush earlier there, but what's the training situation when something so big as that? What balance of mental freshness but also physical readiness are you striking? Or is it just a
Yeah,
complete completion?
no, it's definitely. I've found it's really important to find that edge, that line between in the build up in the training. Like, let's look more at like a transcontinental run. Training for that, you really want to get a high load. Like, you really got to train your body to take on that type of mileage, but not that type of mileage, not in the training, because if you do, you're already tearing your body down. So it's a fine line. You can't, like, I was running 315 miles a week when I ran across the US. You can't really train up to that. If so, you're already in the effort and you're going to come into it depleted. So I find like a really strong 3-month block followed by a little bit of time off, another big, strong, like 3-month block. And then you really want to start like a long taper so that when you get to it, you're fresh enough. I actually like purposely put on weight before starting my run across the US so that I had something to burn through. And then, yeah, so then like the Colorado Crush was a little bit different. It was, in the mountains. It was not supported at times. It was really me relying on me. And I couldn't get up in that high altitude because my training blocks leading up to it were in the winter. So it was just getting as prepared as possible and then knowing that you're going to have to deal with a lot of adaptation along the way. What's really nice for me now is I've done a lot of that adaptation. So adaptation for me in big endurance events, the way I kind of look at that is there's a point where your body is going to say, no, I don't want to do this. Like, we don't do this. And it's your job to overcome that mentally, overcome the physical barriers. And what happens is our human body is amazing. It will adapt to just about anything. So you got to go through this phase of everything in you saying we shouldn't be doing it and say, no, we're going to do this. And your body just aligns to that. It's going to be painful. It's going to be an arduous, process. But once you get through it, that's where like the magic happens. And again, luckily now it's like my body just like, a couple days into this, it doesn't freak out. It just says, all right, we know how to do that. We've already adapted. And that's where, you get to see progression in your abilities.
Do you put obviously you mentioned you have started going to the gym a bit, which is great. Do you do any other cross training? A lot of ultra guys do cycling to sort of supplement, get a bit of aerobic training in without the continual impact on your knees, hips, etc.
Yeah, I love the bike. I've found where the bike really shows up in my training is the real positive side is like after a big run, I know I need to move my body. It's going to be good for recovery, but I'm tired of running. I'm tired of the beating on my legs. And I find that like for a month, I'm like, I'm going to become a cyclist. And it lasts about a month for me. I'm like, I think I'll go back to running. But that low impact is really good. I find it, happens a lot more for me in the recovery process. And then also, unfortunately, over the last couple of years, I keep having like a reoccurring ankle injury. And now I'm finding it's happening to both ankles. I almost can count on it happening annually. And the quickest way out of it for me is movement. And the bike seems to be the way to do that. If I can get on the bike, I can flush it out a lot quicker. The swelling goes down and I can get back to running. As I age, as I like progress in this space, I'm finding that it's the way that I'm going to stay engaged with it all, though, is to find new ways to move my body. So cycling, getting in the gym, even just hiking. Like when I get done with the London Marathon and I go into this Leadville block, I'm really planning to start really slow. And that's a lot of that is for my ankles. I'm just going to kind of ramp up by doing a lot of long hikes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I really do like to diversify. And the more older I get, the more I do that. I used to be very myopic, just running. Now blending a lot of stuff in.
So with the Colorado Crush, for example, how do you even come up with an idea like that? Obviously Transcon people have done it before, but it's still quite a unique event. But then there's thinking, oh, I'll do this really hard race or this really hard challenge. And then there's thinking, I'm going to do the race and then another race and then probably a few more races and then do this massive challenge in between. Like, where does it start on a run as an embryo and then grow over time? Or is it just like, bang, I want to do this thing?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like things like running across the U.S. are very much just like I heard about it, it popped in my head, and I was like, I'm going to do that. Whereas to what you're saying, the Colorado Crush is a lot more unique of an effort. So for those listening, what I did is essentially I combined all of these big endurance bucket list items here in Colorado into one summer. So there's the Leadville Trail Series. There's a marathon in June, a 50 in July, and a 100 in August. Signed up for all three of those. Between the marathon and the 50, I ran the Colorado Trail, which is a trail 485 miles that crosses the Rockies in Colorado. I did it in 11 days. So then I ran the 50 miler. And then between the 50 and the 100, I summited all 58 peaks over 14,000 feet here in Colorado. We call them the 14ers. So yeah, it was this big effort. I kind of coined it. I came up with it. And for that one, it was built out of necessity. I was at a time and place in life where I kind of stepped away from sponsorship running, got a day job, fucking hated it, and was like, I was like, I had my reprieve from that job was to get in the mountains. And my wife and I, we did like 22 of the 14ers the summer before the Colorado Crush. And somewhere in there was where I started dreaming it up. And again, it came from necessity. It was from a place of, I'm not happy right now. I know this makes me happy. How can I get back to doing this all the time? And then it was like, well, that would require you to come up with a justification to see yourself in the mountains all summer. And yeah, these things just started to line up. I think it first started with like, I'll just do the Leadville Trail Series. And it was like, what are you going to do in between those races? Blah, blah, blah. And then it grew into what it was. And I'm just thankful to have found support when I needed it for things like that from some really supportive brands and had the tenacity to go after it. Because you really, like, so much is just like, my grandfather used to have this saying, he was a proud Texan, and it was, if you're going to shoot, shoot. And the idea being, if you come up with an idea, don't just sit around and not do it. Like, go for it. Like, give it all you got. And I think I'm proud of myself for leaning into that and, yeah, dreaming this shit up and then finding a way to make it happen.